What we're going to talk about today are various use cases that we can use within the system that will hopefully inspire you guys on different ways that you could leverage the system within your world. Okay? Building an innovation practice. What does building an innovation practice mean, and what does that look like? Well, when we talk about innovation, hopefully when we think about our business, we think we're an innovative business. If someone has an idea, right? So you've got your business, you've got executives within an organization, and there's a ton of ideas. So building an innovation practice will create healthy ways to get those ideas to be actual new practices within an organization. So I'm skipping through a little bit of this. How do you do that? What I have found when I'm talking to a lot of people who want to do innovation, oh yeah, we have an innovation team. And I'm like, great. What do you, like, how do you take your ideas? And then how do you decide which ideas to actually put into pilots? And then how do you decide which pilots worked and which pilots didn't work? And then how do you decide which ones that you actually want to bring in as new processes and procedures within your organization? They're like, well, we just meet, we take the notes, and then we do the thing. It's like, okay, that's awesome. It's a great place to start. But with Stemmons, you can actually build a structure that will allow us to start to get these little ideas into the system. So we start thinking about what this looks like. First, you come up with a strategy. Then you've got these ideas. You evaluate and decide which ones you choose. You set up pilot programs. You evaluate and decide which pilot programs worked and which ones didn't work. And then you hand off and track the progress throughout the entire launch of the pilot program. What's important here is to have feedback and communications going on throughout the whole process. Because open communication, in my opinion, is a really key to success when you're implementing change. And ideas, by nature, especially if you're moving them into pilot programs or getting them into your world, are change. So we want to enable a platform for people to be able to give us feedback and communicate their ideas and thoughts throughout this whole process. So let's break these down and look at these individually. The first is strategy. There's two kind of concepts to strategy. We can have an innovation strategy, and which is what I just described, those little boxes. And then you could have a company strategy using what we call our roadmap planning within an organization. So company roadmaps are amazing. Does anyone in this room anyone ever built a company roadmap? No, one person has. I'm looking at him. But it's, what do we want to do? What's our vision? What's our goal? Where do we see ourselves in 5 years? And what Stemmons does is it enables you to keep track of mission statements, keep track of high-level goals, keep track of mid-level goals, and metrics to track that and see how are you performing against the goals that you set out for your organization. What's also really neat about company strategy is this can be done departmentally, right? So accounting can have their own mission statement and their own high-level goals, and their own mid-level goals. And then we could also assign out roadmap action items to people to fulfill on those goals. And the metrics will then report against and see how we're doing. This is really key when we're talking about an innovation practice, because oftentimes the company strategy will influence which ideas we choose to move forward with in terms of putting them through the process of becoming a pilot program or rolling them into our company. Make sense? Cool. So this can be done, department, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the company strategy. Next is ideas. Idea capture. It's a big one. There's a lot of different ways that we can capture ideas. And it's important that we categorize them so that we can sort through the ideas and understand them in alignment with our company strategy. So we have internal ideas and we have external ideas. And then some of those are strategy-driven, right? Hey, we have this high-level goal. We have this mid-level goal. What's a way that we can fulfill on this, right? So that's strategy-driven. Or opportunistic. You're keeping up with the marketplace. Market climate is changing, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these ideas are solicited, and some of them are unsolicited. Right? It goes on and on and on here. But now let's take a look at all the different ways that can come in. You might have a company suggestion box. You might have an external suggestion form on your website that people can communicate, hey, I have this idea, or I have this recommendation, or sometimes, to be honest, it comes in as a complaint, right? And are we looking at complaints in a way that could be an idea and turn the negative into a positive to effectuate change within our organization? Open-ended prompts and trend watching. Okay, these two things. Open-ended prompts. We should also prompt ideas, or we could, not should. We could prompt ideas within our organization. Perhaps you decide to schedule out a CAS job, right? A case automation job that goes out once a quarter to every head of the department. Hey, do you have any ideas that you've been rolling around with that you'd like to tell us about? We'd love to hear your ideas. That also creates a sense of contribution amongst your employees and helps cultivate a sense of ownership. I know that I really love, I don't own Stemmons, and I sometimes I like to feel like I act like I do, right? And that really makes me take care of the baby, right? And I really want all of our team members to also feel like that as well. So prompting ideas can create a sense of ownership, right? It's our company. We want to treat it and nurture it and cultivate it. Trend watching was that if there are market trends, right? AI is this new big thing. Blockchain is this new big thing. How are we bringing that into our organization? We might have strategic partners. We might have strategy sessions. And all of these ideas are coming in through different ways. And the important thing is that we have structured metadata to sort through those ideas, and then we can evaluate and decide which ones we'd like to do. And we can evaluate and decide this based on a few things. And quite frankly, some might just be, no, this doesn't fall in line with what we're doing, and that's okay, but the fact is that you're capturing them. You can do this a few different ways. You might have a committee that reviews all of the ideas and votes on the ideas. You might have scorecards on the ideas. We recall Quest, a meeting with a question and an answer, right? We might have idea scorecards. We also might have idea scorecards by department that aligns with that high-level goals and the mid-level goals to say, does this idea work? Is this idea going to vibe with us, for a lack of a better word? Yeah? Vote, as we talked about, and you could also have an algorithm. Look at these ideas. We could plug in an AI tool, right? How many times does this word appear? You know, how do we get more ideas in February than we do in November? Should we up our innovation practice at a certain month? Right? Take on more ideas and roll more ideas into our organization. Once we do that, we then say, okay, which ideas do we want to launch as pilots within our organization? So, when you're doing that, this is a big one. When we're talking about pilot programs, it's another thing. It's like, great, that's an idea, go and do it. And if we do that, it's likely that different department heads or different people within the organization, without any structure, will execute on those pilot programs in a way that they feel is best. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. However, it makes it challenging for us as an organization to then see which pilot programs are working, right? Which ones aren't working. So what we can do is we can create a structured way to set up pilot programs. We need to make sure that we have teams and stakeholders. We have intervention details. We have a budget for the pilot. We have milestones, tasks, and metrics. And the fact of the matter is if I always have a common approach to launching pilots, I am then able to see how they're doing in a common way, right? Like, I'm pretty sure everyone in here has said, you know, it's like comparing apples to oranges. Well, all of these pilot programs that you're seeing, whether it's a customer check-in or an artificial intelligence-driven dynamic offers, like those seem very different, and they are. But we can extrapolate common details about those pilot programs, and then we can report against it to see how they're doing. So we then have a structured way to look at our active pilots. Right? Any questions about that so far? Making sense? Monitor and manage, PMO office, so there you go. Okay. It's pretty simple because now we evaluated and decided on the ideas. Now let's do the same for the pilot program. Which ones worked and which ones didn't work? So how do we determine that? We might have a balanced scorecard, right? So we might grade the pilot program. you might have an innovation project name, and then you'll have a cost and see what kind of payback it would yield and how many years it would take. Then we can set up common factors, for example, risk level or strategic alignment, right? And we can grade them. And then we can surface this information in a way that will then spit out a recommendation by empirical evidence. Yeah? Pretty cool. I think so. Then we hand it off. Just like we're launching anything new in an organization, we want to make sure that we have the things in place to launch pilots in a consistent manner, even if the nature of a pilot is different, right? We need protocols and documentation. We need training, change management. We're getting ready to launch this into our organization. Let's do this in a very structured way. Skip through a little bit of these. Oh, not only do we want to launch it, but we want to make sure we're also reporting off of it, right? So how did it go? Checking in on the pilot. And that essentially, and some of you guys were in our session yesterday, that's essentially complete lifecycle management, right? We're onboarding ideas. We're offboarding some of them. We're onboarding pilots. We're offboarding some of them. When we onboard the pilot into our organization and it becomes this living, breathing thing, we're keeping track of what processes are in our organization. We're checking in on them. And the reporting helps us check in on them. How is this idea working? Do we like it? Is it really yielding the returns that we projected that it would yield? And all the while, we'll have that feedback and communications. Recognition and awards, status updates, analysis, protocols, and schedules. Like I mentioned, open communication, in my opinion, is literally foundational to a good relationship, whether that's personal or professional. So if we're starting new things and we're empowering our organization and we're allowing for open communication, then all the different components of the evaluate and the decide and the pilot programs and the change can typically go over smoother. Change disrupts. And if we can enable people to feel like they have a little bit more control, right, by sharing our knowledge with them, we'll reduce disruption. So we've gone from we're sitting around a round table, we're taking minutes at a meeting. This person, who by the way might be very, very intelligent, might be taking this idea and putting it into place, and it might work sometimes, it might not. But now we have a very structured way to really get our innovation practice and our ideas and the pilot programs that worked into our organization, rather than just having them bounce off and kind of fall to the wayside. And let's hope some get through the cracks. So what we've done within Stemmons is we've got a lot of what we would consider in the ideas and the evaluate and decide and pilot programs. For example, all the checklists, right? Different ways to capture ideas. We have a lot of that already designed for you guys. So for those of you who do not yet have an instance, it will be in the base one. And those of you who already have an instance can access the designs that we've done for all of these things on the shopping list, and then we can configure that into your system. And this might look like a lot, and be lying if I didn't say it was not a lot. It is a lot. But the thing about it is, if we recall, and this has hopefully been a common theme, there's patterns within Stemmons. So while these things may seem very different or a little bit of a reach, you can break it down and simply put it into your system in a way that's consumable for the common user. And that's how you build an innovation practice. Any questions?